Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We'll get started because it's 1 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us at the first event that we've run this year in association with the advancement team. It's part of the Where Do I Start Discovery Week, and it's about where do I start the job search again as a graduate. Just while we start off, we've just got a poll that I think will appear on screen in a moment. Just to get a flavour of where we are in the room, where people are up to, and what stage you're at. I think the poll should be appearing any moment, and there we go. So I'll just give everyone 30 seconds or so to answer the poll. So it's just about which of these options best describes it at the moment. So we've got out of work, studying, working part-time, working full-time, in a temporary role or other. Well, there's only one option you're able to submit, but yeah, if there's different ones, then we'll see how we go. I'll just give that a minute or two. Proverbially, I won't actually take a minute or two. Cool. Okay. It looks like the majority of you have answered. There's a few people answering still, so I will leave it open. But it looks like not working at the moment is where sort of about half the people in the room are at. A few people studying, presumably sort of further study if you're a graduate of the uni. A few people working part-time. There's about a quarter of you there, and about 10% of you in full-time work. So yeah, the good news is it doesn't really matter sort of which of those things applies to you, because we've tried to design this seminar so that whatever stage you're at the moment, it's relevant for you. So thanks a lot for taking part in that poll. We'll do introductions now. So hello, my name is Tom Davis. I'm Graduate Employability Officer at the University of Leeds Careers Service, and I'm joined by my colleague Anna, who I'll allow to introduce herself to.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna. I'm working as a graduate support intern here at the Career Service at the University of Leeds.
Great. So yeah, just to sort of introduce ourselves a little bit and give a bit of background into us both, because I think sometimes at these sessions you can sort of wonder who's actually talking to you and sort of forget that we are people as well. We're not just professionals. So I graduated from university about 10 years ago or so. I know that's probably difficult to believe, but you know, believe it or not, it's true. I graduated from the University of Sheffield. I did politics. I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do after university. I hadn't really thought about it at all. I knew I wanted to stay in Sheffield, but scrabbled around for sort of 4 or 5 months after university, failing to get anything. I was on job seekers allowance, which for those of you not from the UK is sort of a government benefits program you can be on when you're unemployed. And yeah, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And then sort of discovered that there was jobs available at universities, and discovered that that was something I really enjoyed sort of the sound of, and started applying for jobs at the university. So I got a 1-year internship at the University of Sheffield, and I've worked in universities ever since. And also, just to say, it's not my dog, sadly, in the photo. Anna, do you want to tell everyone a bit about you and your sort of situation?
Yeah, so I am also a recent graduate. I just graduated on December. I did a master's here at the University of Leeds. And before that, I did my bachelor's and I graduated on 2021. I did it on my home country, Ecuador. I did a degree in international relations. And after I finished, I was doing a few internships, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I was feeling a bit lost, honestly. I thought I wanted to just study politics and save the world. But after I finished, I was a bit, I found that I didn't necessarily wanted to focus on that. So I did a few internships, then I struggled to find like a permanent role in what I wanted to do. And then I decided that I wanted to do a master's degree. And then I came here to the University of Leeds on 2022, and I did a master's degree on international communication. And I finished last August, graduated December. And yeah, I started this internship here at the Career Service. I used to work part-time here, and then I really liked helping and like giving advice to students and everything. And then when I got the chance to be here, I really liked the opportunity. And then yeah, I'm on a 1-year internship. So yeah, I'm also kind of unsure of what comes next. So yeah, it's kind of in the same shoes of maybe a lot of people here. But yeah, so we'll see what comes after.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Anna, and hopefully it just gives you sort of confirmation that we know the position you're in. As Anna said, Anna's sort of quite literally in that position as a recent graduate herself, and I was in your shoes not that long ago. So yeah, we'll hopefully have some good advice for you, and coming from a place of experience as well as knowledge from sort of the area that we work in. So just to run through sort of how today's session is going to work. As I said at the start, the title is How to Get Back Started with a Job Search as a Graduate, hopefully aimed at increasing confidence for those of you who might need a bit of a confidence boost or maybe are not where they wanted to be at the moment. We're going to cover sort of three main topics with a lot of different things within that. So what to do if your strategy hasn't gone to plan, how to sort of reframe work and experiences that you've already done and already got, and how to tailor that if you're maybe looking at going down a different route, and then also the importance of keeping a positive mindset. We're hoping to keep it, and we've done our timings and think we're about right to keep it to about 50-50 of us talking, but also give you the chance to ask any questions you've got and for us to try and answer them all. We have got a question and answers facility on Zoom, so do feel free throughout the webinar to drop any questions in that you've got, either sort of in response to what we're saying or things that sort of pop into your head. Generally, there is also the ability, you should have the ability to upvote questions. So if you see a question in there that you like the look of, or similar to something else that you were going to ask anyway, feel free to just upvote that rather than sort of repeating a similar question. And we will try and tackle the ones that got the most upvotes. We've also, when you were registered, you were given the opportunity to ask questions, and we've selected a couple of those that we're going to sort of answer before we get going with the live Q&A. Just to mention with the Q&A, unfortunately, given that we've only got an hour and it's quite a specific topic, we can't really cover anything around international students or working in the UK's or visas. There is, however, a Global Careers Week taking place in 2 weeks' time. So the week commencing the 26th of February, and I'll make sure that details of that are included in the email that you receive afterwards. There's sessions with a law firm who work sort of with students and on student visas, and also a session with I believe, Egyptian graduate who recently got a sponsored graduate visa to stay in the UK. So lots of great events taking place as part of that. We've also got a few questions about specific degrees and specific career paths off the back of that. And yeah, just to say that we are more than happy to talk to you about that. But given that we've got quite a big audience, I think there's best part of 100 of you, it doesn't really make sense to sort of tackle specific degree questions, but you do have the ability to to make an appointment, follow up with us afterwards and talk about any of that afterwards. So yeah, don't be afraid of that, but that won't be covered in this session. And I think you probably saw in the chat, but we are recording the session. None of your names or faces will appear. So don't worry about that, it'll just be us. So if you do need to dip off early, or you know anyone who hasn't been able to make it today who might value coming, then do feel free to share the link with them. So just before we go on to sort of the main meat of the session, I guess, just to sort of run you through briefly what access, the support you have access to as a graduate from the Careers Service. So my job title, as I said at the start, is Graduate Employability Officer. And part of my job is to not only do sessions like this, but to communicate out to final year students and graduates all the range of support that you have as a graduate at the University of Leeds from us. So a lot of people don't realise that when you finish, you have access to the Careers Service. Maybe you already knew that, or maybe you found out about that because of this event, and this is the first thing you've engaged with. But basically everything that you had as a student, you have as a graduate. So that's access to appointments, events, online vacancies and resources. If you take one message away from this webinar, then please do engage with us. Register as a graduate there on My Career, which will give you, that's our online careers portal, which will give you access to all those things I mentioned. In the same way, it takes 30 seconds and we'll approve it within a couple of working days for you. We've also got an email address there, graduatesupport@leeds.ac.uk, which is dedicated for graduates to get in touch and ask questions. Me and Anna look after that. And hopefully knowing that it's us and knowing who we are might make you a bit less sort of hesitant about getting in touch about that. Also, you have access to a load of online resources as a graduate. So there's CV Checker, where you can upload your CV and get immediate feedback and a score and suggestions for how you can improve it. Practice Interviewer, where you can record yourself answering interview questions and watch them back and sort of assess your performance. It's massively cringeworthy to watch yourself, but I promise it does help you sort of improve. Student Circus, which is a great resource for any of you who are international graduates who are interested in working in the UK, loads of advice about working in the UK. And These sort of employers who will offer you sort of sponsorship and that sort of thing, advice on that. We also have access to LinkedIn Learning for our graduates. We've only had that in the last couple of years, and not many universities offer that. If you've not heard of LinkedIn Learning, it's a sort of spin-off of the main LinkedIn Learning LinkedIn platform with over 15,000 online resources, courses, and certificates that you can complete. It's a really good way of upskilling yourself and learning skills that maybe you're lacking, and especially for those of you who are either not working at the moment or working part-time, is a really good way to sort of improve your employability and demonstrate to employers that you're doing the right things. We have a fortnightly graduate newsletter, which goes out to graduates who are registered on My Career, which Anna writes every fortnight, and that includes all the latest news, events, jobs, and sort of tips and tricks. It's well worth getting yourself registered as a graduate on there, so that even if you don't have the time to sort of actively search, you're getting that into your inbox. We've got a careers blog with loads of resources, helpful tips, and case studies from both employers and graduates and students who are in similar positions to you. And also for those of you who are in the West Yorkshire area at the moment, there's a program called Grad Skills, which isn't run by the University of Leeds, but that we work on as part of like a working group and to deliver it to our graduates. It's delivered by the West Yorkshire Combined Authority and is sort of courses and events and networks that you can utilize with employers in the local Leeds area. And again, a really good way of demonstrating that you're trying to upskill yourself and learn and develop. We will also include details of that in the email afterwards. There's a program called Jumpstart Your Career and also Graduate Accelerator, where you can work one-on-one with a careers professional over sort of a number of weeks. There is certain eligibility criteria on those, but yeah, we'll send out the details of that. And if anyone wants to ask about that afterwards, do feel free to drop us a line. We'll help you out. So I guess on to the sort of the main meat of the session. I'm going to talk about the first few things, and then I'll pass over to Anna for a bit, which I'm sure will be a relief by the time you've listened to me rabbit on for 15 minutes or so. So I think the first thing we sort of wanted to talk about was whether to, if your strategy hasn't gone to plan, and for a number of you, sort of you're out of work at the moment, which presumably isn't what you wanted to do, and is why you've come along to this session. And sort of, I think a helpful first point of call and a good place to start the session is to sometimes reflect on why. I think we're taking a moment to reflect on what the factors are that have gone wrong, and not in a negative sort of downbeat, beating yourself up about it way, but just it can be a helpful way of assessing, well, what went wrong and what do I need to do differently to try and make sure that that doesn't go wrong in the future. And I've listed a couple of potential reasons why that could be. This isn't comprehensive by any means, but I think it's some of the main reasons. Uncertainty about future steps. I think that's completely common and completely typical. Lots and lots of people don't really know what they're going to do after university. You may remember when you registered for your graduation ceremonies, the university asked, what do you know what you're going on to do next? And it's a really high percentage of people who say they don't. It's sort of upwards of 50%. So that's completely typical and not something to worry about. It can even be the case that a few years out of university, you don't know what you want to do. And that's absolutely fine, but it can mean that when you're in this sort of sudden environment where you haven't got uni and you're looking for a job, you're scrabbling around a bit, trying out different things and trying different approaches and sending up a lot of applications without really knowing what you're doing. And that can work because it can mean that you're sort of keeping your horizons broad, but it can mean that you're lacking a bit of consistency and a bit of a rhythm. I think once you've got a bit of a clearer understanding about what you want to do, even if that's between a few different things, you'll be a lot more confident about sort of the path you're taking and the quality of the applications you're making. So I think sort of addressing, okay, if you are uncertain, what are you between, and trying to narrow it down a little bit can be a helpful stepping stone. I mentioned quality there. And quantity over quality is a term that we use in the careers service I think it's an approach that a lot of people think is the way to go. And it's sort of natural it's natural to think that and assume that in a certain way, where if you send out hundreds of applications and get out to as many people as possible, write up a good CV, write up a generic cover letter or a supporting statement, then surely something will land, right? I mean, it can work, but in reality, it's much, much, much better to try and make a smaller number of quality applications rather than sort of spamming hundreds of employers with your application. I myself do work in recruiting graduates and students. So every year we have an intern, a graduate intern, which is Anna at the moment. And I also recruit some students in my line of work as well. And I'm involved in other stuff. And the difference between someone who can write a personalized sort of application where they talk about their skill set and why that matches the job and why they're interested in it and how it feeds into their future career, it just stands out so much more than someone who's just written a kind of generic statement, which probably, to be fair, does make me think that they could do the job, but doesn't do enough to convince me over the people who have taken the time to write something personalized. So I think, it is more time consuming and it can feel frustrating because you can feel like, oh, I've spent all this time and I've only got one application out. I've spent maybe a day or half a day writing this, and whereas I could have done loads, but it's a better use of your time. And we've got some resources online that go into more detail about that. I think while we're on this as well, I just wanted to touch on ChatGPT and AI, which I'm sure some of you have used maybe over the course of your learning. You might already use it for careers, or you might use it for something else. If you don't use it already, I'm sure you're aware of what it is. And some people are using it sort of in a career sense to try and sort of, I guess, try and save a bit of time and get ChatGPT to write your answers and write your applications for you, prepare interview questions. I think I'm not at all saying you shouldn't use it under any circumstances whatsoever, but I would say, exercise a bit of caution with it. I think there's a couple of danger points with it. One is that it doesn't write you a personalized application answer. It writes you something that matches a job description. So if you're not the only person who's put it into ChatGPT, there's a very good chance that you might literally receive the same wording as what someone else uses. We've spotted that before in a few student applications recently. A lovely bit of phrasing that we then see in 2 or 3 or 4 other applications, which makes it obvious it's not something they've written. The other danger is that you can get it to write you a really nice little statement, but then when it comes to interview, you don't know what to talk about because you haven't actually sort of spoken about it from your perspective, or you've forgotten what it was. So do exercise a bit of caution there. And again, the personal touch and writing about you and giving the recruiter an idea of who you are and why you're the best person for the role is a much better approach than spamming them with hundreds of employers. Sometimes I think as well, you can ask yourself a question about whether or not you've been a bit too ambitious to begin with. And this is a tricky one. And I think it's a tricky one to work out because I think it can be difficult to know what your place is after a degree, particularly if there's those of you who have done a postgraduate degree or maybe have lots of work experience or have done internships before, but maybe you haven't done that, but you've still come out with a good degree from a good university and you feel enthused about going into the world of work and you sort of think, oh, I'll be all right. And that was definitely a feeling I remember. I remember graduating with, a 2-1 from a politics degree at a decent university, but not spectacular, and thinking, oh, I'll be all right. I'm forgetting that not only in the local area was I up against, tens of thousands of graduates from my university alone, but nationwide, you're up against hundreds of thousands of graduates from that year alone. And that's before you take into account people from previous years who might be going for similar types of roles to you. Or, and there's an international market as well. So it is competitive out there. And it's not to say this isn't meant to be a downbeat, know your place by any stretch whatsoever. I think it's more just remembering that, a career is a marathon and not a sprint. You probably will be working for a number of years. And it might be that you need to start at a slightly lower point and then build your way up. For example, if you were interested in working in marketing or something like that, it might be that rather than going for those permanent marketing roles at a certain salary point, you look at a short-term internship and see if you can build up some experience there to then use that experience to work at another, apply for another job or get another job within that organization. Likewise, it might be that you get an affiliated role at a marketing agency, learn the ropes a bit and try and get in through the back door. So taking different approaches and rethinking about how you approach these organizations can be a good way of reflecting, if it's not been working so far, maybe that's a different thing you can try. And not applying to the right jobs. I think this is sort of linked to the above, but it might just be that you haven't explored all the options that are open to you. I mean, I know, as I said, it took me a little while to realize that there was jobs available at the university, and that was far more suited to me. When I first graduated, I was applying for sort of all sorts of stuff. I was applying for jobs in sort of the legal sector and accountancy and things that, with hindsight really weren't right for me. And I wasn't getting anywhere, partly because I don't think it was right for me and partly because I don't think they were right for they were right. No, you know what I'm saying anyway. I've lost track of myself there. But, it could just be that you're not aware of all the options that are available to you and found the right thing for you. There's so many jobs out there in so many sectors. And the vast majority of them don't require you to have a particular degree, or maybe don't even require you to have a particular skill set. Those transferable skills are what you need. And I've just popped a link in there to the Prospects Career Planner, which you may have heard of Prospects. It's a graduate careers site, but the Career Planner especially is a sort of online quiz where it'll ask you a load of questions about your skills and your experiences and also your career priorities. So what do you value? And it will spit out some suggestions of sectors or job roles that might work for you, and also give you links to read a bit more about them and see some job sites linked to those sort of areas. So it's well worth having a look at that if you haven't done that before and if you're a bit stuck, because it might just help you think a little bit wider than what you're thinking at the moment. I've also just written something else there. It might be another reason your strategy isn't gone to plan. There's obviously loads of reasons it could be, but I think that approach of sort of thinking about why it was and what you can do differently could be a good way of trying to get to the next, make yourself in a more positive position. And I guess that leads me on to that slide was a bit negative, but this sort of slide is a bit more on the same theme. But what can you do to try and improve from here? So I think first thing to say, don't just focus on the negatives. I think it can be really demoralizing when you're in this position, especially if you're comparing yourself to friends, course mates, people you see on LinkedIn and thinking, oh, why have they got to that position and I haven't? I think it's a really natural thing to do, and particularly I'm always super aware when we talk to students and graduates that from my position, working in a job and having a job, it's much easier said than done for me to say, "I'll keep your head up, it'll get better, you will get there." But it is worth thinking, it is worth trying to keep that mentality. And I think not comparing yourself, it's worth remembering that people who sort of promote themselves on LinkedIn or talk about their successes are largely going to be talking about their successes and not so much the sort of difficult times they've had. So try not to compare yourself too negatively to your contemporaries, but also reflect on what's gone right, and how can you use that to go forward. For example, if you've decided you know what sort of area of work you want to go in and what career you're interested in, brilliant. That's way more than a lot of people know at this stage, and that's a real advantage. If you've sort of had some work experience or had an internship, fantastic. What skills have you got from that? How can you talk about that? How can you utilize that to apply for future jobs and impress the employers that you want to impress? And have you had success? Have you got through to an interview? That shows that you had something about you that was worth inviting to an interview. You must have some experiences and be able to write good applications. It's another sort of irritating cliche to hear, especially when you've just been unsuccessful in an interview. But so often it's not about you and what you were lacking. It's just that there might only be one job or two jobs, and that there was some other brilliant people. I have to turn down, unfortunately, some really talented and great interviewees because there's often only one role going. But as for the feedback, reflect on what you've done right and take that confidence into future applications. And, use resources that can help you, look at what you've done and look at how you can develop that for the next stage. So I think I've mentioned all of these things already, but just to sort of remind you, Prospects, which I mentioned on the previous slide with the Career Planner, that's a great general graduate careers site. They've got job profiles, sector profiles, listed websites, information about working abroad, information about working in the UK if you're a sort of international student. So yeah, really worth checking that site out, and Target Jobs, which is a similar one. The Career Service blog, which I've already mentioned, which we do a lot of posts on. Anna's very active on there, and I am too. So yeah, lots of relevant information and sort of case studies and updated, and are very much sort of as and when basis. So as we hear about stuff, we'll talk about it on there. And if you are on Instagram, we're very active on Instagram. We've got a great social media team who promote all the various bits and pieces we're doing. So events, jobs, opportunities. We post on there nearly every day in some form or another. So yeah, if you are on Instagram, Leeds Uni Careers, give us a follow. And just everything else that we outlined in the graduate support offer at the beginning. As I said, this is hopefully sessions useful for you and you get something out of it. But if you don't, please do come back and talk to us, or it's a development. It's not a one-time offer. You can use us for as much as you need us for. So please don't be shy about getting in touch with us and utilizing us. Right, I'm going to hand it over to Anna now for the next part of. Oh, sorry, I've skipped way ahead there. There we go.
Yeah.
I'll pass over to Anna.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, so now in this next section, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can reframe the work that you've already done. So like Tom said, it's it's good to focus on what you did wrong and like know what you have to improve to for the future applications you're working on. But then also try to not only focus on what's the things that you've done wrong, because most of the time there will be things that you did well that you can build on, and that's the where you can probably improve in your next applications. You can build into things that you've done right. The best way that you can do this is probably just working with the feedback that you receive. For example, if you've gone into an interview stage and didn't succeed, maybe you need to practice more for interviews. You can ask the employer to give you some feedback as to why maybe they didn't choose you. And then you can work with that and then improve for next times. Then if you're, for example, if you're not passing through the first stage, maybe you need to work on your CV, writing your CV or like your cover letters. You can have someone have a look through your CV, read them, and then just give you advice on how you can improve. Maybe you can talk about things differently, or maybe you need to highlight things in a different way, depending on what you're applying for. It's just like working through that feedback, and then you'll feel that you're making improvements as you go in the next applications. And then if you're still finding it hard to then see what are the things that you could be doing differently, then you can work on self-assessment, try to find your strengths and your weaknesses and work from there. Focus on like, what are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? What are some of the weaknesses that maybe you have? And then you can develop some skills. This is always good to like find things that you can maybe highlight on your CV or in interviews. But then sometimes it's also hard to figure out what your strengths are. So you can also ask people around you, like if you haven't received any feedback from like employers, maybe in first stages, which sometimes is hard because if you're one of hundreds of people who are applying for a role, maybe you won't get feedback. Then you can ask people around you, your family, your friends, colleagues, professors, and then they can give you a bit of a more clear sense of some of the things that maybe you haven't realized that you're good at, and then you can build onto those things. And then if we go to the next one, yeah. So another thing you can do is look at the previous applications that you've done and see if you're talking about all the experience that you have. Sometimes it's easy to like leave experience outside because you think it's maybe not relevant, maybe experience from part-time roles or volunteering. You maybe think they're not looking for that kind of experience when in actually employers are not necessarily only looking for professional experience. They want to see the skills that you've developed through your studies, in part-time jobs, through volunteering, or even when you've been part of clubs and societies. It's only about learning how to talk about those skills and transfer them into whatever it is that you're applying for. So for example, most employers look for things like organization, teamwork, public speaking, presenting, and flexibility. So you'll need to see how you've had those experiences before, because most of the time you'll have like communication skills, organization skills that you've developed either like in your studies, during your degree, or in other different part-time experiences that you had, and just work through them and see how you can apply those into the role that you're applying for now. Can you go to the next one, please? Thank you. And yeah, and just really try and focus also on what employers are looking for. Sometimes it's easy to just lose focus of what you're applying for, and employers want to see that you're tailoring your applications as most as you can to what they're looking for. So you can see what they are highlighting in either the job descriptions of the roles you're applying for or in their websites. You can have a look through their values, some of the work that they've done. And through doing that research, then you know that what things maybe they're looking for in your application that you can highlight and make more visible. And that'll make you stand out in when you have like hundreds of other applicants who maybe are not doing that. Also ask yourself if you match what they're asking for. Maybe it's the case that it's not necessarily the role that you're looking for. It's from the title, it's sometimes easy to think, oh yeah, that's something I'd like. But then once you read through the job description, look what the role will involve, then maybe it's not something for you. But if you do think that the role matches what you're looking for and what they're asking for, then you can use the STAR method to show your skills when in the applications. If you've never heard of the STAR method, then it's a way that you can talk about your experience through like talking about like situation, task, action, result. Then you can talk about skills that you've developed and then kind of showcase how you would include those into the role that you're doing or the role that you're applying for. But then if you think that maybe you don't match the role or the skills that they're looking for, but you still like to apply, then find if there are other opportunities to build those skills. Maybe you could do some volunteering where you can like build skills, whether they're like technical or like soft skills. You can also focus on online learning. Like we said, we have access to LinkedIn Learning where you have access to a lot of different courses and different things that can help you develop those skills that maybe you're missing. You can also do freelancing work if that's something that you think will help you develop some specific skills. And yeah, so if we go to the next one, please. Yeah, so before we go into the next section, we have a little poll now that should be on your screens in a little bit, but we just want to hear from you and see how you're feeling right now in terms of your job search. So if we give it a couple seconds, then we'll see the results. Yeah, there we go. We're getting a lot of results already. Yeah, so far we have 42% people feel uncertain, 37 feel hopeful, which is good, 27% feel frustrated, then we have 30% motivated, optimistic, disappointed are the ones that had a bit less votes. So that's really good to hear. Yeah, if there's anything you take from this, see that you're not alone in this. Like a lot of people, like you see 40% are feeling uncertain of what comes next. It's easy sometimes to forget that there are other people who are maybe in the same position as you. Sometimes when we focus on this people who have been successful or who have pretty much like gotten jobs immediately after graduation, then it's easy to feel like you're the only one that's maybe struggling or like still trying to figure out the next steps. So if you take anything from this, just see that you are definitely not alone. A lot of people on the call are also in the same way, feeling the same way as you. So yeah, so we can go to the next one, please. Yeah, like I said, you're not alone. So remember that. I know it's easy to focus on those who are successful, but remember that everyone's career path is different. Most of the time, people struggle in their search for the right job. If you ask people, there will be a lot of them who have taken different paths, who maybe like went into a job thinking they would love it and then didn't like it, and then have found the next job that they've clicked. So yeah, it really is very different for everyone. So yeah, try to keep your spirits up. I know it's hard when you're facing rejection or struggling with finding the right thing for you. But it's important to just try and keep a positive mindset. Know that there's things that you can do to ease the pressure. And like we've said, like things that you can do to reframe the work that you've done already. So you don't have to start from zero. It's just like kind of working and taking those next steps to find the right thing for you. Can we go to the next one, please? Thank you. Yeah, so obviously part of keeping that positive mindset, the hard part is maybe facing rejection. So how can you deal with rejection? So the first thing that you need to know is the rejection most of the time is inevitable. So you don't, it's something that, like Tom said, most of the time there'll be hundreds of people who are applying for a role, but there's only one person who will actually get it. So it's not a personal decision. It only means that what the employers were looking for maybe was slightly different from what you have to offer, but don't take it personally. It's definitely not something that reflects on your abilities or your self-worth. it's something that most people will have to face, especially when they're starting out with the job search. And it's a difficult thing to go through, so make sure you do acknowledge your emotions. It is okay to feel frustrated and disappointed. You don't have to be positive all the time and feel like, yeah, I got this. It's fine to feel like sometimes you don't know what's next or what you're going to do after, but yeah, just give yourself some time to process those emotions. And once you've done that, try and reframe your perspective. Work on thinking that rejection is not necessarily a failure or something you failed at. It's something that is maybe an opportunity to learn. When you face rejection, most of the time it gives you a chance to learn about other things. For example, when you get feedback, you'll probably get things that you hadn't realized before that you could be doing different, or that you haven't necessarily focused on working. Then it's also good practice. Like if you get interviews or if you're writing cover letters, even if you're not successful, it's still something that you're progressively getting better at. And it'll, like, with time, you'll realize that, okay, it's not as hard as when you first started. And then also you can take a moment to think about, was it the right fit for you? Like maybe if you faced rejection, it was because it wasn't necessarily something that you would be good at or like you would enjoy doing. Like think about from the other side, maybe you don't even want to get the role. Is take that step as a way to see like failure as opportunity for redirection. And yeah, it's just like a way of getting you closer to the right direction of what you need to do or what the right job for you is. If we can go to the next one, please. And yeah, and also um, getting this reframing your perspective and trying to keep a positive mindset goes in hand with having a growth mindset. So instead of a fixed mindset, which basically just means that instead of seeing something as, yeah, I'm not good at this and I can't get better at like interviews, or maybe I can't write better cover letters, you instead see it as a way that, yeah, no, I can get better after practicing or after changing things or improving on other things. Then you know that you can progressively get better. It's not fixed. And as the mindset is not fixed, it's also confidence is not fixed. It's not about being confident all the time and knowing that you can do everything, but it's also about knowing that even though you have barriers or you face obstacles, it'll be fine. You can overcome those barriers and you can handle conflict better, and you'll build resilience through like the rejections or the obstacles that go through when you're applying for jobs. And then once you have confidence, it's really useful to then be able to seek out new opportunities. When you're confident, you're more open to like reach out to people, build relationships, network, but also that just generally help you in your well-being and feeling more confident in taking the next steps. And if we can go to the next one, please. Yeah, and just there's a lot of different ways that you can improve your confidence. You can think about your strengths and achievements, like we mentioned earlier. There's a lot of things that you've already done. So just thinking about that and knowing that you're capable of so many things will help you feel more confident in taking those next steps. And then also explore new opportunities. Maybe there's things that you haven't tried before that are good for you, or like could be a good opportunity for you coming when you're applying for jobs or different paths in your career that you've never maybe even considered. And yeah, take care of how you speak to yourself. It's really easy to just feel I don't know, like just try to not talk like in the sense that you're blaming yourself or thinking that you're not worth a specific job, or just because you face rejection, when in reality it's just not the self-limiting beliefs. Most of the time the only thing that causes is for you to like lose confidence and then feel more worried when you're taking the next steps. So yeah, try to not do that, and like just reassure yourself that it's fine. It's okay to feel a specific way and it'll get better after that. And lastly, make sure you use us. Like Tom said, we have a lot of different resources in the career service, and especially as a graduate, you have access for it as long as you need. So we have so many things like appointments or events or the CV checkers, mock interviews. You can use all of those things, and it'll really help you when you're trying to submit a new application or you have an interview coming up. It'll help you feel more confident once you show up for that interview or submit that application, then it'll help you build on that confidence and then also improve if there's things that you can improve on. So yeah, just make sure that you sign up as a graduate if you haven't already, and then make sure to just have a look through all those resources and yeah, make the most of them. And yeah, I think we'll go to the next one. Yeah, so we are now going to move into the Q&A bit of the webinar. We asked you to submit some questions beforehand. So we're going to cover some of those before we get into the questions that you've submitted now. But yeah, if you still have questions, don't be afraid to put them in the Q&A tool on Zoom. I think, it's like right next to the chat, so you can have a look there. But yeah, we'll have a go at the pre-submitted questions first. So yeah, so to get started, I'll ask Tom a question. So the first question we have is, how do you show that you're a good candidate without necessarily having a lot of experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think Anna's touched on this a little bit already, but I think it's about making sure that you think about what you've already done and dig every bit of experience you've got out. So, like I think a lot of people we speak to in appointments and that sort of thing think that there's good experience, i.e. the stuff that you do in an office job or like a full-time role or an internship. And then there's sort of irrelevant experience like your degree or part-time work or volunteering. It's just about making sure, at the very, very least, you've done a degree. So many people we talk to will just talk about their degree, one line on a CV, the grade. But, for example, if you did a dissertation, that's got research, that's got time management. If you've done any group projects, that's teamwork, that's communication. If you've written things, of course, you've written things, that's working to a deadline. So that's just an example from your degree. But part-time work, even if that's, what some people view as bad experience, or shop work or, bar work or stuff like that, there's always skills that you'll have. So I think most people don't have experience, like most people have some form of experience. So reframing how you think. And if you really feel like you haven't got experience, try and get some. If you're not working, you can do online learning, you can volunteer, you can get involved in other things. So yeah, I think that's the best way of sort of covering that really.
Yeah, amazing. I think the only thing I would add is there's loads of opportunities, like Tom said, like volunteering. There's like remote opportunities that you can do if like location is maybe an issue. So there's ways that you can build on your experience and then those skills that maybe they're asking for. If you feel like you don't have them, it's just slowly building them and working on how you transfer them into your applications. But yeah, thank you, Tom. And then another question we have is, I'm in a job I know I'm not going to be in forever. How do I get the most out of it and start the transition to a new career?
It's a really good question. And I think it's a position that a lot of people are in after they graduate, either because they're literally in a job which they know isn't going to be forever because it's a fixed term or a internship or that sort of thing, or because they just know that it's a stepping stone, it's something they've taken to tide them over while they look for sort of a more permanent or more long-term job. I guess it's a better way of phrasing it. I think the best way really is just depending on what type of relationship you have with your manager and the organization you work at, try and be honest and say, look, I'm interested in getting involved in this. Are there any opportunities for me to do that? Try and take on responsibility. I think obviously don't make yourself stressed or go above and beyond sort to a degree where you're struggling, but try and ask for opportunities, try and take things on. Work out as well, what do you want to get out of the role? If there's something you're lacking in, can you try and engineer a way of getting that experience? So yeah, try to talk to your manager, try to talk to colleagues, and yeah, think about longer term what you want to develop and go from there, is what I'd say to that.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I
Yeah,
think that
great.
covers it very well.
And then so the final question I will ask Anna is from final question from the pre-submitted, and we'll move on to the Q&A, which I can see has been quite active. But what should I do if I don't hear back from a company after the first stage?
Yeah, so I think that's very easy to like, that's something that's quite common for people. Like if they don't know what they've done wrong with their first application, maybe their application for CV, cover letter. I would say first, if you don't hear back from them, think that most of the time on the first stage, applications, like employers will have hundreds of applications, so don't get too discouraged if you hear nothing back from the employer, because probably they won't have the capacity to respond to each applicant individually. But you can try to reach out to them, send them a follow-up email if you received when you received the rejection or whatever it is. Try to get in touch with them, ask them for some feedback, and then if they're able to, they'll get back to you and give you some of the things that maybe you can improve on. But if you don't hear back, then don't worry too much about it. Like I said, most of the time, maybe it'll be hard to hear back from them. But you can get feedback from other people. Maybe you can come here to the career service. You can come here and get your CV checked or your cover letters checked, and then get feedback in that side. Because most of the time, when you're working on an application over and over again, it'll get easier for you to miss mistakes or like don't really think about things that you could have done differently. So just having someone have a look through your application. Maybe if you don't want to come to the career service, you could also have a friend or a family member to just have a read through whatever it is that you wrote, and then have them suggest things that you could have done differently. And that way, you know that in the next applications that you submit, you'll just be better at it, or you'll change things that maybe you didn't at the beginning. And then even though you maybe didn't receive the feedback directly from them, you've still have feedback that is from people who are like external from what you wrote. So that'll be really helpful for you then to get better at the next applications that you submit.
Yep, completely agree with all of that. Yeah, so let's move on to some of the questions that are coming through live. So I think there's 2 or 3 separate questions on sort of similar themes, which we've had quite a lot of sort of upvotes. So we'll try and tackle sort of 2 or 3 in one, I guess, because they're all around entry-level jobs and about the level of experience required. And sort of particularly if that exceeds the level you're at the moment. So we'll go with, I'm can not say people's names, but I'll say their initials to keep it somewhat anonymous, just in case. But so we've got one from PO, which is, how do I find more entry-level jobs? Most of the jobs I find are mid to senior level. I'm someone who's in between entry-level and mid-level. So should I even apply for mid-level jobs? So I think, and as I said, there's 2 or 3 separate questions around entry-level jobs, and there not being many at the moment, or there being a bit of a discrepancy between that and graduate roles. I think what I'd say to that is that it is tough at the moment, and obviously it's we haven't really addressed that it's a difficult economic climate at the moment, and perhaps that's because it's just doesn't need to be said because everyone is living through it and everyone knows that. But it is a difficult market at the moment, and there probably are fewer graduate level roles as a result. What that doesn't mean is that there's no graduate level roles, and I think it was something that we found during sort of the peak lockdown years as well. I think a lot of people assumed that because of the lockdown, because of the pandemic and the economic downturn off the back of that, that meant there was, everyone was scuppered and there'd be no roles. It definitely meant that there was a downturn and that there was fewer roles, but it didn't by any stretch mean that there weren't graduate level roles. And it did also mean, there was also the case that a lot of graduate level roles with employers were actually going unfilled for whatever reason. So I think if you're struggling, and none of the people have said what sectors we're talking about here, so it will probably differ, this advice, sector to sector or sort of degree to degree, but probably it's about, if you're really struggling to find the roles, it's about expanding where you're looking, I would say. So if you're not already registered as a graduate in My Career, registered graduate on My Career, because any roles that we advertise on there will be from employers who want students or graduates. So get on there and you can get job alerts and you'll get our fortnightly newsletter. Whatever sector you're interested in or whatever faculty you come from, make an appointment, speak to an advisor. They'll be able to direct you towards sort of good job sites and good other places to look. As I said, I'm not trying to sit here and say, oh, come on, there's loads, because there are fewer. But yeah, expand your networks of where you're looking. And in terms of should you apply for those mid-level ones, yeah, sure, go for it. You know, like it's never easy to predict how many people will be applying for different roles at both mid-level, graduate level, entry level. We see real sort of discrepancies at different times of years. So yeah, go for it, see where you're at. It can be a good little test of sort of where you're up to. So hopefully I've answered sort of those entry level questions. If you do want to follow up on that with any specific sort of sector inquiries, My Career, book an appointment, speak to someone, and they'll be able to give you more sort of personalized one-to-one guidance. I don't know if you had anything to add on that, Anna.
Not much to add. I would say just like I think My Career is a good place because we do have like a filter where you can have a look through like different entry-level jobs, a lot of like graduate schemes if you're interested on that. There's also a lot of opportunities within the university if you have a look through, like if you're interested in different things. There's like graduate internships and stuff that you can maybe apply for if you're finding it hard to like maybe find entry-level jobs. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else I would add.
Great. So another one that's sort of come up a couple of times from a couple of different people. So one anonymous attendee and one LC. So question about what would your recommendation be for people with more than 2 years? I think it's 5 years in the other questions case. 2 years of experience in a different country who are trying to get a job in the UK as a graduate within the same industry. Will that experience be counted in the UK? Anna, do you want to maybe start with this one as someone who can maybe talk with a bit more experience about that?
Yeah, I think it's hard to know. It also depends on what your industry is or what you've studied, what you've worked on. But normally as an international graduate, if you have previous experience, it's not necessarily like completely erased. Like if you have experience working in a different country or something like that, it's just something that you need to, like we said, know how to transfer into the roles that you're applying for, see what, not necessarily what you've done, like the technical bits of it is because maybe it will be different roles that you're applying for, but just try to highlight those like skills. And then if they ask for technical skills, then also use those. But I would say like it's hard to just think like if you have experience in a different country, you'll get immediately maybe the same level that you were working before. It's different in every sector, but I would say do use your experience when you're applying for it. Don't just think, okay, I can't talk about this experience because it wasn't a UK experience. It's still valuable experience. You still have all the skills and like the knowledge you've gained from those. Is just learning how to transfer those into whatever you're applying now, and then talking about those maybe in cover letter and explain your situation, what you've done before, and how that translates into whatever you want to do. But yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Yep, echo all of that. And I'd also say make sure that when you're talking about your experiences that you're talking about them in a transferable way. Say you're tailoring it to the job, you're tailoring it to the organization, you're talking about things that they'll understand what you're talking about. We do see sometimes with international students, they'll talk about technical skills or programs that might make sense to them in terms of the country they're from or the country they're working in, that as a UK recruiter, you just wouldn't know. So make sure that it's sort of UK geared and that you're talking about skills rather than where you got them and how and that sort of thing. So yeah, there are a couple of questions that I'm going to sort of really quick fire answer. So SD asked, how can I get a job abroad? Prospects going global, 2 sites I'd recommend you look at. Loads of advice on there on whatever country you're interested in. There was a question about tailoring results and job suggestions on Leeds Careers website from an anonymous attendee. On the My Career job filter, you can filter by location. And again, pretty much any careers website, you should be able to filter by location. There's also the Leeds internship program, which offers exclusive opportunities a lot of the time, often with Leeds or West Yorkshire-based organisations. So I'd recommend them. There was also a question from, I think it was, first name began with M, around disclosing a non-visible disability. Just to say that there's a site called Employability, so ability sort of with a capital A, which we have access to, which has got loads of really good advice on that. We've also got a careers advisor who's dedicated like to specializing in disability things. Generally speaking, the advice with disclosure of disability is be upfront about it, be honest. Most employers will facilitate those sort of requests and they are legally obliged to. So if they don't, they shouldn't. And then there was one other one I was just going to tick off quickly. Oh yeah, about a lot of companies require a minimum 2 degree. Didn't achieve this, but I have a lot more work experience. Try not to focus too much on the 2 degree. There are still some companies that do ask for that, but increasingly it's turning more and more away from that. Just make sure you're highlighting what you're good at and the experience. You can structure your CV so that the degree comes bottom if you want. I'm not saying that every company will be like that, but there will be more and more that don't mind about that. And then there's another one from an anonymous attendee there about graduates have access to LinkedIn Learning, but it was a wait list when I applied. I think you must have been quite unlucky to get the wait list because there's not for most of the time we have it. There was one period where we were pretty much up against the limit of the licenses we've got, but we've almost always got plenty. So if you haven't got in yet, do let us know or apply again and we'll be able to get you on quickly enough. And then there's AC asked a question about their sort of job situation. Follow up with us separately and we'll be able to talk to you about that. So over to another sort of more general one. There was one about AI and companies using AI. I can't remember who it was who asked it. I can't see it, but here we go. It was another anonymous one. So as many recruiters are increasingly using AI to identify candidates to interview, how do you tailor your application to successfully pass through this software? I think the thing here is AI is almost a bit of a red herring here because what AI is doing is it's replicating the job of what recruiting managers used to do, which would be read through a load of applications and look for keywords and key skills that have been matched and things that have been met. But instead of a human doing it, it's AI doing it. So it's still around making sure that you read the job profile, you read the person specification, you read what they want you to submit. Don't submit what you want to submit what they're asking for, and making sure that you're really hitting the skills. I think that's particularly important with AI, but it is particularly important whether it's AI or a human reading it, to be honest. I think sometimes people think that you have to be a bit cute with your language, but you don't. So if it says, for example, one of the skills they want is example of social media marketing or good verbal communication skills, don't be afraid of saying, I have good verbal communication skills as evidenced by blah, 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 blah. I have social media experience through my usage of, etc. So be direct, sort of talk about the skills and make sure you're thinking about that. It can be an advantage and it can be a disadvantage, but there's many advantages as well. Any bias should be removed and those sort of things. So yeah, don't overthink it. Make sure you're hitting the skill set. So there's a couple of questions around sponsorship, which I'm afraid we won't be able to cover in this just because that could be a whole different seminar itself. I did post the link to the Global Careers sessions that are taking place in a few weeks' time, and there is some advice out there on the different sites we've got. So I'm not ignoring that, but unfortunately we haven't got sort of any time for that one today. Yeah, there's a question there from Anonymous around if we were to remove any international experience, it's not relevant, that shows a gap in employment. Don't remove the experience if it's, like it's still relevant, but I'm not saying don't remove it because it's international experience. Any experience can be relevant. Just make sure that you're tailoring it to a UK audience and a UK recruiter mindset. Okay, what else do we have? Okay, question from NH. How do we actually put our experiences relatable to the position when we wanted to make a transition from the previous industry? This is the tricky part, as I found the job description puts us in a situation whereby employers may think we have not done enough relatable to the experiences. So the key thing here to do is to look at the industry that you're looking to transition to and look at the skills that they're looking for and look at what they're asking for in job adverts, whether you're actually applying to a job or whether you're just thinking about it. List all those out and then think about what do you meet and how do you meet that from your previous experience. So what have you done in your current industry, which matches what they're looking for in the new one? And where there's gaps, how can you fill those? Can you do online courses? Can you do volunteering? Could you maybe get that experience through your job? It's all about sort of trying to be basically as clever as you can be. And sometimes, I think there will be times they favor someone with that previous industry experience, but also there's times where people are delighted to hear from someone not from that industry because it brings a new perspective and a fresh outlook on things. So I think it's not always a disadvantage to not have industry experience. Again, I'm not saying that it isn't ever a disadvantage, but yeah, that would be my advice in that instance. I'd also say with any sort of question like that, where you've got like particular circumstances and a particular sort of outlook, I'm going to repeat myself again, book an appointment, speak to us. We can go through that in a lot more detail, either one of us or a colleague, and sort of go into a lot more detail about where you are. So do get in touch with us. Anna, are there any questions that you can see there that look you'd like to answer?
I think the only one that might be good to answer is, should you send a follow-up email after an interview to strengthen your chances, or will this lead to them seeing you as making excuses or trying to influence their decision too much? I would say that it's good to follow up after an interview. Obviously, don't like push too much, like don't send 10 different emails if you haven't heard from them. But it's good to follow up after and say like, yeah, it was good to have, it was good to meet you, have this experience, you'd be interested in working. But yeah, also don't put too much pressure on them if you feel like you're sending too many emails, or like immediately after you'll be like, I haven't heard back, oh, what's happening? Just give them time and then you'll hear back from them. But yeah, it's generally it's good, I would say, because then it'll show that you're interested, that you've got specific points from the interview that you were interested in their side and stuff like that. So I would say that is good. Just try and not like make it appropriate and don't make it too much. Like don't send them 10 emails after. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think I would completely agree with that. A few people send emails and say, thanks a lot for inviting me to the interview. It was really nice to meet you. And like, I'd be really interested in working and happy to discuss any follow-up questions or other opportunities. What I would say is there's something about, will it look like I'm trying to make excuses or something like that? Like, definitely don't sort of comment on the interview. Don't say like, oh, I don't think I answered that one very well or anything like that. Don't keep it brief, keep it to the point. I think the other thing in terms of following up, when you're at interview, don't worry at all about asking when you should expect to find out. Employers don't mind sort of answering that. And do feel free, if they haven't got back to you by the time they said they would, don't do it like the day of. But if they've said we'll let you know by Monday next week and it's Wednesday the next week and you've heard anything, again, feel free to send a polite follow-up message, just following up and wondering when you'll be able to hear. So I think we're sort of at 3 minutes past 2. I think maybe we'll just do one more question to end on. Raphael, I can see you. Sorry, that one will be get in touch with us afterwards. I'm afraid I haven't got that off the top of my head. And I wouldn't know. I'd need to do a bit of research, but do feel free to follow up on that. So we'll end on another one from an anonymous attendee, which I've been gaining voluntary experience alongside my degree with the SU and in 2 internships since finishing my MA, and I've been turned down for countless jobs after the interview stage because another candidate had more experience. At what point do employers view internships and voluntary experience as being serious or worthy of their consideration? Obviously, there are no easy answers, but I'm wondering what to do to get a foot on the ladder. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a situation, it's very much sort of relates to what Anna was talking about, where I think I completely understand the frustration and it must be really annoying. But the fact you're getting invited to interviews and that you've done so much stuff alongside your degree and your MA and in internship form and sort of with the SU, that shows that there's something there that they like. It's just for whatever reason you're not quite getting over that line. Now, whether that's you haven't quite nailed the interview, it could often be, you know, honestly, it's such a frustrating thing for people I interview to probably have to hear. But generally speaking, we'll interview 5 or 6 people for a role, and most times 4 or 5 people are great, but there's only one role, and so we have to let a load of people down. It's probably not that they don't see it as serious or worthy of their consideration. It's just that, yeah, for whatever reason, it's not quite getting there. So I don't think it's the experience itself that's letting you down there. And there is, you know, there's clearly some good stuff in what you're talking about. Again, one last time, do feel free to make an appointment with us to talk through this in a bit more detail. We can look at what you've done and what you're talking about, and whether there's any way of sort of making that more precise and more tailored to employers. But yeah, I think try and keep the faith. Like, there's clearly something there that employers like if you're getting to interview stages. And I don't think it'll be the fact that it's voluntary rather than paid. The other thing to say is that you don't have to label it clearly on your CV or cover letter as being voluntary. You can just talk about it in general terms if you are worried that that is a factor. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining and for all your questions and sort of signing up in the first place. We've got the links in the chat there, and we will have, we'll be going out in an email with the recording and some of the useful links and that sort of thing. For anyone that we didn't get to answer your question, I'm sorry, it'll either be because we ran out of time or it's just a bit too specific for this session. But as I said, there's my career, sign up as a graduate on there, or email us graduatesupport@leeds.ac.uk, and we'll be happy to sort of follow up with you. Don't consider that this is the only thing that you can do. We've got loads of other stuff coming up, sort of both in terms of organised things and sort of just less formal one-to-one appointments and opportunities to chat. It's graduatesupport@leeds.ac.uk or my career, book an appointment or ask a question through there, and someone will get back to you with some useful advice. But yeah, don't consider that this just has to be it. But yeah, thank you very much for coming, and I hope to speak to some of you soon. But yeah, bye. Have a good afternoon.
Everyone.